Okay. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for agreeing to take part in the podcast today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So, why don't we just jump straight in? Tell me what your company is, what it does.
Sure. Our company is GIVN Goods, and we are a consumer products company dedicated to turning everyday purchases into meaningful good. Our flagship product is GIVN Water. It's a premium North American spring water, and for every bottle sold, we fund a day of clean water for a person in need.
Okay, so given GI,
GIVN.
so no E.
No E. We skipped the E.
You skipped the E. So if people wanted to find you and your company, whether it's to buy the product, whether it's to talk to you about your business, whether it's to become a retailer for your business, where do they find you?
Sure. You can find us at givnbrands.com. That's GIVNBRANDS.com. Or you can reach us at info@givnbrands.com.
Okay. What about social media? Do you guys partake?
We are across the board at GIVN Water, GIVNWATER. So you'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, and most of the other social channels with that handle.
Okay. So we interview founders of food-based businesses at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us where you guys are at in the business right now?
Sure, absolutely. So GIVN started about a year ago. We began a pilot on Amazon where we developed our prototype water product and put that out for sale as a part of an initial customer discovery effort. We launched our formal retail push in about June/July of 2015, this past year. And since that time, we have moved from no retail presence to 50 retail locations carrying our product today. And as of March 1st, we'll have over 250 locations with the addition of our newest partners. So it's been kind of a meteoric rise for us as a bottled water competitor, and it's been a whole lot of fun.
So that's fantastic. A bottled water company.
Yes.
I'm just sort of sitting here kind of somewhat scratching my head of, somebody waking up one morning and saying, I know what I'm going to do. I want to do something nobody's ever done before. I'm going to launch a bottled water company. Is that what happened? You were just,
absolutely.
You had this eureka moment that meant you ran down the street naked after having a bath, realizing that you needed to be the water bottled guy of
That's right.
of Georgia.
It was 1991, and it was a fabulous year. It was interesting. I had the opportunity through my career to work with CDC and International Health and do a lot of work in business, some of which involved consumer products. But one day it just occurred to me that there's a lot of good social one-for-one products out there. They're doing great things. But there are these everyday purchases, these purchases like bottled water, where there's millions, hundreds of millions of transactions happening every day. And there really isn't any, as you look at the bottled water space, I like to say people are competing in all the wrong ways. Who can have the highest pH? Who can create the biggest bottle? Who can bring in water from the farthest place? And what we really wanted to do was to take regionally sourced premium waters, because as it turns out in the U.S. there are quite a few premium waters, and really harness that high quality premium water and strap it to a social benefit, and bring to market a product that really, for the most part, doesn't exist. And it's a product that a consumer can feel good about consuming and feel, we think of our products as reflecting the consumers, and it reflects the good in each and every person that we believe is out there.
So you mentioned the CDC as part of the kind of how you arrived at this aha moment for the product. For those that don't know, give us a quick background on who they are and what you were doing with them.
Absolutely. So the CDC is the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's widely considered the preeminent public health organization across the globe. But my experience working with them was working as an advisor and consultant in international health, principally around areas of measuring the impact of investments that the CDC made in foreign countries. So that is really, as you think about what GIVN is, where every bottle funds one day of clean water in need, it tied into a personal passion of mine in terms of being able to measure and assure that for each bottle we sell, we're able to fund and provide a day of clean water. So it's kind of a natural fit.
Okay, perfect. It's a for-profit company, a not-for-profit company. What's the structure
So
of that?
GIVN is a B corporation. We are a for-profit company, but our primary mission is social and environmental good. So we do operate at a what I would call a for-profit status, but we have a very strong social and environmental component to what it is we do.
Okay, so the business concept in this case, if I'm summarizing it correctly, is you found a product which currently is being sold in huge quantities.
Yes.
And because all of the plastic involved in bottled water and the quantities involved means that there's a whole heck of a lot of refuse and so on. So you've actually approached it as, okay, let's find a category that has some negatives and let's somehow turn that into a positive. Is that the thinking?
That's right. That's right. So we took a product that I would say most people at some point feel a little bit guilty about consuming, whether it's the fact that you have fresh, clean water coming out of your tap, or the fact that the plastic is generally considered not to be productive for the environment. And we did two things with that. One, we attached the social good, so we really focused on the fact that we may have different views about bottled water, but the reality is today, bottled water isn't an alternative to tap, it's an alternative to soda. And more people are buying it for the first time in the entire history of beverages. Bottled water sales are going to exceed soda in 2016. So as opposed to thinking how do we end bottled water because that consumption is rising, we looked at two things. One, how can we harness it for social good? So we attached the buy one, give one component to it. And then we worked with university researchers and experts in plastics and degradable and sustainable plastics to build a bottle that we feel is responsible. So
it's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, we say it's not perfect, it's progress. So we use depending on the source, we use a biodegradable plastic for many of our bottles, and with other bottles we're looking to use 100% previously recycled PET products. We do our best to use either degradable or recycled plastic in all of our bottles. We source all of our waters regionally so that we can limit our carbon footprint, and for all of our operations we use TerraPass to effectively become carbon neutral. So we have a pretty strong program and passion in place about minimizing the impact of our product and maximizing the social and environmental outputs.
Okay, got you. So what were you doing immediately before you started GIVN?
Immediately before I started GIVN, I was working with Deloitte Consulting and working principally at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and as well with Deloitte in what was at the time their global health practice, which involved supporting international ministries of health in countries throughout Asia and Africa. And I had the concept for GIVN back then, and I approached some of my colleagues about it, and they informed me that if I continued my employment at Deloitte, I was not allowed to start another company. And with that information, I promptly resigned my position.
You did?
I did.
You didn't try and multitask it?
No, it was actually going to be contrary to my employment agreement.
Okay, so it's a conflict of interest. It's considered a conflict of interest.
It was considered a conflict of interest, so we eliminated the conflict.
Okay, very brave of you. Did you have a big savings account that meant you could afford to do that for a few years, or?
Oh no, don't I wish? No, I have two kids at the time. One was in private school, a mortgage payment, and two cars. So
okay, take me through that conversation. You had to sit somebody down and say, hey
Yes.
there, things are going to change a little bit.
That's right. Well, I was very blessed. My son was actually in a school that specializes in treating dyslexia, and he was at the end of his 2-year program. So he graduated from that program very shortly last year, very shortly after starting GIVN. So that was a big checkbox. And then, as opposed to having the huge war chest with which to start this, we did a few things. One, I continued to consult outside with a firm that was supportive of my entrepreneurial spirit. And two, we really focused on building our initial supply chain around an on-demand model. So we weren't manufacturing, aka tying up large sums of capital in our inventory as we started. We had arrangements to where we could essentially produce on demand in order to meet the sales that were happening in real time.
So, but take me through the conversation. How does one sit down with a partner, and when you've got 2 kids, and basically say, right, allow me to kind of share with you what's going to be happening moving forward? How does that conversation go?
That conversation does not go well. My wife is tremendously supportive, and I'm very proud of her and her accomplishments, and she's very proud to support me, but it certainly was not without its sacrifice in terms of, I like to say, this is going to sound terrible, but, we had to start cutting out ancillary expenses. So we killed cable, we killed things like the maid we had every week, we started to kill any and all third-party services that help make our lives easier, to kind of really trim down the cash flow and allow us as a household to redirect that funding into the company.
Right. Did you trim bottled water?
We did trim bottled water. I'm actually a huge sparkling water fan, and less of a huge devotee to some of the premium bottled water products, although I love our water, and it's all my kids drink these days. In fact, they marvel in disgust at other waters when we're in convenience stores and other places. So I take it as kind of a personal challenge to provide them access to GIVN wherever we go. Perfect. And it is a huge uphill battle. So
you had that conversation, you resigned from Deloitte, you did do a little bit of consulting on the side to kind of keep the lights on. You pared back on some of the, as you call them, ancillary expenses, which it's amazing what becomes ancillary when you have no income or you have a very low income.
Right.
Where do you go from an idea and more free time to having a company with a product which donates, for every product purchase it donates another bottle of clean water that's now in distribution? Take me through some of the key milestones that you went through.
Sure. I mean, I think the first one was figuring out how the heck to make a beverage product. So while I had been equipped with years of business experience from my prior roles, I knew absolutely nothing about the beverage industry. So the very first thing I did was kind of an accelerated correspondence course in manufacturing and production. And I did that by calling endlessly around to different manufacturers so that I could understand their prices, their products, bottle formats, caps, bottle shapes, sizes, water.
When you say manufacturers, you mean component manufacturers, companies that
calling primarily co-packers in our industry, so individuals that manufacture bottled water products either for, I call it wedding water / the golf course water that you might get at your country club. And down to the folks that are making the bottled water for the private labels at Jewel Osco, Publix, Kroger, those folks, to really understand their businesses, so that I could begin to build mine. And it is an expensive education, because it is not without making mistakes.
Okay, so I'm going to jump on that mistake thing in a second. So start thinking about some of the biggest, bloodiest, unpleasantest mistakes you made.
Yes.
But how do you find these people? Is there a private label water bottle directory somewhere? I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious.
Yes, no, there isn't. And, I would summarize what I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years about bottled water as following. 90 to 95% of the bottled water in America that is privately held is held by about 5 companies, Nestle, CG, Roxanne, etc. The other 4% is held by companies that I call affectionately the wedding water companies that will make you branded water for your events. And then 1% are premium. They are premium bottled water co-packers that sit on a premium source. They have extensive capabilities in their lines in terms of how you can package the product. And those folks largely exist in the shadows. If there was a such thing as a dark web for manufacturing, they are there, and you find them kind of like much of what you would think of social networking. You call somebody who knows somebody else, and eventually, after you discover Kevin Bacon, at the other end of him is the person who can help you make a premium spring water. So our products, we have an emphasis on natural products. If I wanted to make my life super easy, I would just take purified municipal water and put it in a bottle. But unfortunately, we have a quest to provide natural products. And so by the time you're done with that, you realize very quickly that there are very few people able to help you do that, and they are not listed in a directory.
And do they do everything? So they work with you, assuming you can find out who those 5 people are, and it sounds like friends of friends of, well, not even friends of friends, but contacts of contacts of
Right.
contacts until you get there. Those 3 companies produce the bottle, get the water, put them together, label them. They do everything, or?
They will, depends, each manufacturer has their own setup. There's kind of I would call it 2 to 3 general categories. There are the folks that are kind of turnkey, so they will blow the bottle on site, fill the bottle, apply the label, put it in a case pack or 6-pack, and then you'll have a finished product. There are other folks whose specialty is more on the filling. So you ship them a bottle of any size, shape, or format. They'll fill it with water, put a cap on it, and put it in a case pack, whether it's a tray or a box. And then you have folks that run in the middle. They can do a little bit of both. But they generally all source their plastic from other providers. They generally all source their labels from other providers. And essentially all of the materials, I guess I would say, with the exception of the water and the manufacturing line, they source from other people. So for us, if we've matured and scaled up, one of our largest internal initiatives has been to integrate our supply chain and bring that in-house. So when we started, we used our co-packer's bottle, we used their label provider, we used their caps, we used their boxes, everything they provided turnkey for us. But the problem became when we wanted to manufacture in more than one site, that the other manufacturer doesn't have that same bottle. They don't have the same labels, they don't have the same caps. And so in order...
Why would you want to manufacture in more than one site?
2 reasons. One, we're very much focused on regional sourcing. So when we have customers in Atlanta, we want that water made as close as possible to Atlanta so that we minimize the impact on the environment, but also our production costs. And 2, the ability to have redundancy and scale. So with some of these co-packers, their financial viability can be uncertain at different points. Also, during peak times of production, as we learned, which will bring up one of my most painful experiences, they can get overwhelmed and actually take many more weeks than you would like to slot orders that are already sold.
So they basically figure out, okay, these guys are relatively low volume versus customer A, B, and C. So A,
Right.
B, and C comes first. These guys are customer Z. They're going to be 26th in line.
Yes. And the other thing I didn't mention, but I'll say was very helpful for us, but it took a while to discover, is other premium brands in this space all have supply chain footprints. So a premium spring water brand that I'll leave unnamed has a regional sourcing strategy, and they focus on only natural waters. And when that realization occurred to me, we very quickly copied their production footprint,
Okay.
for lack of a better word.
Well, I mean, so I mean, from your point of view, given that you are focused on a cleaner, better, more sustainable business model around water,
Hmm.
sourcing local has the obvious advantage that you don't have the trucks and the airplanes and the supply chain involved in shifting large quantities of what doesn't seem like it, but obviously is a heavy product in volume.
Yes, it is extremely heavy. On average, a 24-pack case of your standard 16.9 ounce bottle will weigh about 30 pounds.
Okay, and when you start moving that kind of liquid around from, I'm thinking of Fuji Water now. A company like Fuji Water that has to take that water and move it from Fiji to the US. That's cost, and that's also carbon, carbon,
Yes.
and so on. So
Yeah, and what's interesting, what they will tell you, and what we actually use in some of our supply chain operations, is they're backhauling that product. So as you look at Fiji, it's a net consumer of imports. It's not a net exporter. So you have ships that are leaving the U.S. laden with milk. I don't know, pick your category: milk, paper towels, and other things, and they're coming back largely empty. So um, in order to offset the cost of coming back, many of the shipping companies will give you extensively discounted freight. The same thing applies in situations like Florida. So if you can locate a producer in Florida who can make your product, you're almost all the trucks coming out of Florida are empty, and they will give you very good deals to put something on, really anything on their truck, so that it doesn't come out of Florida empty.
I see that. I see the logic of that, but I actually like the idea of a product which is made locally,
Yes.
has a local footprint. Anyone that's employed because of that business is a
Hmm.
local employee. It helps the local economy directly in terms of those wages,
Yep.
those jobs, and so on. And there's multiple benefits of doing it locally if you can get the quality of product
Yes.
in the local market.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, just last week we were up visiting a new plant, and it was literally a family-owned facility. There was the brother, the sister, the father, and the mother all running the operation,
Perfect.
and it was quite amazing.
So now, scratching my hands with glee, let's talk about some of those painful mistakes that you encountered in the beginning of
Yeah.
the business.
Where to start? I would say start out small so that when you make that mistake, it doesn't kill you. Every mistake is a learning experience as long as you survive. Um, I think some of two that really come to mind. The first one is the easiest one. We were in the rush to make a label for a new size that we were going to be producing. We made very small modifications to our current label and then rushed it off to print, because the only thing that we really have to buy in advance is labels. And we thought, sure, no worries. But what we didn't factor into account was the different size of this bottle and its different proportions were going to fundamentally change the way the label presented itself, and not in a positive way.
Okay.
So we wound up with several $1,000s worth of labels that we eventually had to write off, because at the end of the day, they weren't, they didn't meet our quality standards. And if we'd have just gone a little bit slower and really understand the visual dynamics, I think we would have not had that learning experience. I think the most painful thing we've endured to date, and it came as a result of not understanding our manufacturer's business as well as we should have. And so when I talked about learning the business, one of the most important things you can do is understand that manufacturer's business. We were working with one of our co-packers to produce a 1 liter format bottle. And we made the mistake of assuming, just like the other formats of bottles that we had them make for us, that they made that bottle in-house and that they had the capability to run it on demand. It turned out that they didn't have the capability to make the bottle in-house. They had to source it from another provider. That provider got delayed. And long story short, we had a paying customer that had to wait 6 weeks for an order they placed in the middle of the summer, and it was horrible.
Did they cancel the relationship salvage that relationship?
No, we managed to salvage it, but we're very open and honest about where we are. Obviously, we're a very small and upstart company. At that point in time, we were even smaller than we are today. And they're a very large, multi-state quick service restaurant, and they were just patient.
Wow.
And
so how many people did you have in the company at that point?
So we had two.
And now you have?
Now we have, depending on contractors, about 3 to 5.
Okay, so you've doubled in size in a year. Wow. And I'm messing with you, but
we're huge, actually.
Huge.
I'm thinking about retiring.
No, love it. So how does a company with 4 people, 5 people, a couple of whom I'm guessing are contractors, how does a company like that maintain quality? How do you embed that within the process? Because I'm thinking if you're starting to produce product in volume,
right,
you can't kind of just rely upon your co-packer to think about your brand and your quality as strictly as you do.
Yes. Well, so I mean, I would say it all starts at the beginning. So for every business partner that we have, we conduct a thorough assessment up front before we select them. So I must have walked through a dozen bottled water manufacturing plants in the last year. And when you begin to walk through a dozen of them, you begin to see where potential issues lie, where they don't lie. For instance, I was in a manufacturing facility recently where they didn't have a sorter, which is the machine that picks up the bottle and puts it on the line. So they literally had this individual whose job it was to pick up the bottles, but by SQF standards, if they touch the rim of the bottle with their hands, that's a huge no-no. And you're looking at this going, oh, that's not going to be good. Because here's, Steve or Mary or whoever this person was, and, they're picking it up by hand and placing it on the line, and that's not really ideal. So, I mean, I think it starts at the beginning. I'd say that the biggest challenge that we have and other folks have in quality comes in 2 dimensions. One, it's the label. The label applicators and the glue that hold the label on a pressure-sensitive label. If you look at Fiji, if you look at our bottles, periodically, I don't know, we call it 10 to 15% of bottles will have a bubble or some imperfection. And we're continually working with our manufacturers to get rid of those by adjusting the pressure on the labeler and even warming the label up to room temperature before you apply it versus taking it out of a shed where it may be cold. All these things to try and make sure that when the clear label goes on, there's no bubble involved in it. And then, as we begin to go past that, the bigger problems for us become damage to the product in transit. So, as an example, I ordered a case for myself off of Amazon. I do that about once every month just to see what happens. And the case was just destroyed when it arrived to my house. So understanding that, working with Amazon to sort through those difficulties, and they're actually very flexible in those arrangements. They surprisingly eat the cost right off the bat without batting an eye, and I think that's maybe one day when we get large enough, we can act like that. But they,
Amazon's pretty darn good at that stuff when they screw up.
Yeah, so we've been working across the supply chain to address that. I'd say what we're now doing, and we've just as of last week brought on board somebody to work in merchandising, where they'll actually be going out and visiting the stores, examining how the product is actually placed on the shelves, ensuring that the product is placed on the shelves, it's placed in the right way, that it's got adequate stock. So we're beginning to reach that point with the large retailer base that we're getting in the grocery store segment, where we're having to have dedicated resources to monitor the quality of our product as it's presented to customers.
Okay, so you've got 4/5 people.
Yes.
That's focused, those people are focused on producing the product, making sure the product is a quality product that meets specific standards. That involves developing local sourcing, local production, local distribution.
Yes.
On top of that, you need to go sell this product to different channels.
Yes.
What channels are you focusing on?
We're primarily focused right now on the grocery store segment as well as the quick service restaurant segment. Within grocery, we're dealing with both big box and with the natural categories. But not, when we talk about the big box, more in the regional and multi-chain local than in the national or super large national. So
give me some for instances of those you're wanting to work with,
right,
and those right now you're just not targeted at.
I think in the grocery store channel, a good example of those that we're not targeting right now are something like Kroger or Albertsons, which is thousands of locations, and the ability to support that chain at this point would outstrip our resources. What we are focused on is a place like Jewel Osco, a subsidiary of Albertsons.
Joe Lasco?
It's called Jewel Osco.
Okay, Jewel Osco.
It's approximately 140 stores, give or take, in the Chicago area. Okay. It's a wonderful new customer of ours. Also, another example is Strachan Van Til. They operate 3 brands of grocery stores in the Midwest, primarily in Indiana and Illinois, and they have 42 grocery stores. So, we're really, focused in the multi-store kind of mid-sized grocery segment. And then as we look at QSRs, we're really focused quick service restaurants.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everyone who's listening.
You're very good. Thank you. I'll start shouting acronyms. We've been targeting those with largely 10 or more retail locations or those with plans to open 10 or more retail locations. The primary strategy behind that is we like, as a small business or emerging brand, to dovetail into their supply chain operations. So Snap Kitchen is an example of a current customer of ours. We're able to send our product direct from the manufacturing site to their warehouse, and then they manage distribution. So it greatly streamlines the demands on our internal operations because we're moving point to point versus managing distribution across their 2+ stores in the Chicago area.
Okay, so 2 things occur to me as you're speaking. One is you've got a very specific strategy, and you're not, from a distribution standpoint. In other words, you're not going out there saying, okay, we're going to go talk to Target. We're going to go talk to Walmart, and just sort of being very obvious about it. You're thinking to yourself, which retailers are going to buy, or which retailers have the consumers that would like this concept and this product?
Right.
And also, what companies can we actually provide this product to without, stumbling because they're too large, they're too big, and they require too much hand-holding. So you're sort of figuring out the ideal size and the ideal customer. Is that an accurate?
Yes, absolutely. And also I would say figuring out the ideal strategy for, I don't know what the right word is, but sales. So we focus exclusively on single-serve sales. So we are not attempting to sell our product by the case. At this point, we're not even attempting to sell it by the 12-pack or 6-pack. We are selling it in single-serve formats only.
So off of the shelf or in a cabinet or?
All of the above. So off the shelf, in freestanding point-of-sale displays, in coolers. It varies based on the retailer. But we have a very exclusive focus on single-serve sales.
Why?
Principally around, we discovered through our research and observing consumer behavior, when you look at the grocery store segment, you see a $4 case of water, right? That's made by Nestle that costs the store maybe $2 to buy, and they're selling for $4 for a 24-pack. Whereas, out the door with margins, distribution, and everything else, a case of Fiji, as an example, to what our case cost would be, is around $24 at retail or $20 at retail. And we don't feel that there's a substantial market for folks that buy cases of premium water. Premium water is purchased much more in a convenience setting and an individual need. And by focusing on that, it helps us remain focused, but it also keeps us from keeps the retailer focused on where they can be most successful. So if we were to provide case packs, as an example, to Osco, it would be very difficult for them to move that in any volume because it would be $20 a case by the time the costs all came in.
But others manage it, so is that because just because they have it's a big volume play from their point of view?
In terms of,
well, so for example, you can
yes.
go and get Dasani in a 24 pack, and you can pay
Yes.
$4.99.
Yes.
And they must make money, otherwise they wouldn't do it. So I'm wondering why your packs of 24
Right.
are going to be $20 rather than Dasani's 5. Is it just purely a volume?
It's a volume in manufacturing. It gets back to the education on how the manufacturers work. So as you look at manufacturers, and there's two broad classes of manufacturers in the U.S. There are what I'll call the premium manufacturers, where they're working on producing things like Evian, GIVN, Fiji, those types of bottles, which have very unique requirements. For instance, pressure-sensitive labels. So with a pressure-sensitive label, the maximum you can produce per minute of bottles is like 300 bottles a minute. If you look at a Nestle or a Dasani that are using shrink wrap or glue labels, they can run 1,500 bottles a minute. On top of that, they're using ribbed bottles, which require much less plastic to be freestanding. Right. And they're using the, I call it the musical bottle. If you squeeze, you can kind of make a one-man band out of it.
You can crunch it.
Yeah, so if you look at these two broad categories, they're designed for two completely different cost structures. And I think that's what's reflected in the difference in prices. And it's why you see, like Evian, for instance, sitting at a six-pack price of $6 to $8, depending on the grocery store segment, while you can get a case of Dasani for $4.99.
Okay, so it's a matter. It's literally a factor of they figured out how to drive costs out of the system, and it's typically by, I wouldn't say going cheap, but going cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's optimizing your manufacturing processes to make it as cheap as possible, or as one of the buyers at a national retail chain told us, it's a race to the bottom in a business we don't want to be in. Sure. Because everything that they compete on is who can make the lightest cap with the lightest bottle with, that essentially will probably one day wind up being the equivalent of a Ziploc bag with a straw through it.
Okay. So you get more margin by selling a single bottle for $1.29 or whatever the price point might be, rather than bundling that together with 12 into 12 and selling it for $4, obviously.
Yes, there is a slight increase in the margin. It isn't, from our perspective, it isn't significant. It's much more, you get into the behavioral characteristics of pricing. It's the total cost presentation to the consumer that has much more of an impact than really how the margins change.
Okay, got you. Okay, so you've made it sound a little easy going out and getting these kind of multi-store grocery stores to say yes. Are you walking in with a briefcase, kind of dropping that onto the conveyor belt at checkout and showing them your new bottles and getting them to buy? How are you getting these folks to consider you as a product and getting them to stock you?
I would say start with a good co-founder. My co-founder, Liz, is amazing, and she is the chiefly responsible for all of our success in terms of the retailers. I mean, I think for us, it starts out with just being an honest, everyday person. We don't, we conduct a basic sales process where we engage through email, then we follow up with phone calls, and then we provide samples, and we meet in person. When we meet in person, we show up in jeans and a nice sweater or shirt, and we have a very simple mission. Our mission is to turn an everyday purchase into meaningful goods. So surprisingly, the discussions with the buyers that we have they go very well. I mean, it's a very straightforward value proposition. We make our pricing fair for the retailer so that they make a reasonable margin. we make a small margin, and we fund a day of clean water for a person in need. So we call it the kind of the triple threat in terms of what we're doing, and we work to be supportive of their needs, and to the extent that they don't believe that our product is in line with their direction, we thank them for the opportunity.
So your business partner, she's
Yes.
kind of driving the marketing and the sales side.
Absolutely.
Is she from the consumer product? Is that her background, or where?
Yeah, so she has a background in marketing and in consulting. She has experience working for another beverage startup, a functional water startup that she was the director of marketing for, and led a lot of their initial efforts at marketing, public relations, advertising. She's worked with other consumer products in the apparel space, and worked with a broad base of companies in general around marketing. She will be the first to tell you she wasn't born a salesperson. She was nominated to be salesperson as we came together to start this company. We kind of drew straws about who was good at what. I took operations and product development. She took sales and marketing, and off we went.
It sounds like you guys are not selling in the traditional sense of the word. In other words, I've met her. She's not the kind of person that walks in looking sharp and put together and is literally selling somebody. You guys, I would imagine, are much more low key, much more about.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like talking to your neighbor or your friend. I mean, our product is very simple. As we said when we started, it's bottled water. We offer a bottled water. It's premium. It does social good, and people can feel good about drinking it. It's a very simple message. It doesn't take a lot for the buyers to comprehend. And the thing that we've learned is interesting is we have a tagline on our bottle. It says "GIVN infused with good karma," and it opens more doors than we ever thought. It was actually created kind of as a last-minute decision in the creative process. And we were with a buyer for a large grocery chain 2 weeks ago. We walked in the door. We said, "Hey, did you get our sample?" It's like, "Yeah." And he looks at us. He goes, "Infused with good karma." I had good karma the day I tried your sample. I'll take it. And that's, within 8 minutes, we had almost 50 stores, and there really wasn't a discussion other than who would be the distributor and, when would we start.
When you say who would be the distributor?
In that particular instance, they were located out of our current distribution footprint.
Okay.
And so we were discussing with them what their preferred options were for distribution.
Explain to me distribution footprint.
So as we started, that's probably one of our earliest /mistakes, learning lessons, is we engaged with the challenge of distribution. How do you get your product to the retailer that you sell it to? We started with a beverage distributor. They were very experienced in dealing with convenience stores and sending 5 cases here and 10 cases there. But many of our current retailers order by the pallet, or they order in very large increments. And that distributor handled the entire Chicagoland area. Couldn't deliver a pallet to save your life. It took them 5 weeks to get our first shipment out. And so that was a quick fail. But what we did is we went back to the drawing board and actually built our own distribution network, leveraging a partner that specialized in wine and beer sales. So as I would say for folks looking to build things, look for analogs. So if you think about a case of wine, it's about as heavy as a case of bottled water. It's about the same size as a case of bottled water. Most grocery stores are ordering wine. And so when we got together with them, they aren't officially in the non-alcoholic beverage business. We said, "Hey, you're going to all of these locations. We need distribution to these locations." And we went from there. So that gave us coverage in southern Wisconsin, Chicago, parts of Indiana, and parts of Michigan. And then we started to build additional distribution partnerships from there.
So they're basically shipping the product to the retailer. Are they
Yes.
making, have they made any connections for you where they've actually said to one of their existing customers, we come by every Tuesday to give you your boxes of wine. Have you ever considered, a new water, and actually join the dots for you?
It depends on the distributor. So the distribution partner that we have in northern Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan does do that. So they will go into their C-store, they will go into their local co-op or grocery store setting, and they'll say, "Hey, we're carrying this new product. This is what it's about. We're really excited about it. We'd like for you to carry it." So it really depends on the nature of the distribution partner you're working with. Our primary distribution partner in Chicago is focused more on just the logistics end. They don't actively engage in the sales or merchandising of the product.
Okay, got you. So, is your wife happier now?
She's super happy. She's never been happier. The key is just to never show her your P&L.
Talking of P&L, how did you guys get to this point? I mean, did you sell your stamp collection and kind of get rolling that way? How did you sort of?
Cashing out large portions of savings.
So goodbye 401k.
Goodbye portions of 401k. Goodbye portions of annual bonuses. Goodbye. I would say it's accurate that all of the private school tuition I had previously paid was immediately redirected back into the business. And yeah, it can be quite, I'd say you just have to believe in what you're doing and push forward. If you you can never lose sight of the financial aspects of the business and the mechanics, the unit economics of what you're doing. But you also have to accept, as one industry veteran told us, that the first years are not going to be tremendously profitable.
Okay. And so, did you get funding from any other sources before you got into FoodX?
No, we did not get any funding before FoodX. We have been entirely bootstrapped, which is a blessing and a curse.
Sure. Was it the right way to go?
For us, it was the right way to go. I mean, as some of the mentors have told me at FoodX, we tend to be too honest and too conservative. But the way I would frame it is, I wanted to learn my most expensive mistakes with my own money, not with other people's money.
Right.
And for us, as bad as some of the mistakes have been, as much as they have cost, it is. You feel, I don't know, personally, I feel a lot better about it because I call it my MBA because it's cost about the same. Is really, and you have to. I spent 15 years as a consultant and working and advising other corporations, and one thing that I never appreciated, really until this endeavor, was actually watching your own personal cash flow move out the door, and then come back in. And I don't think no matter what you do, there is no substitute for having ownership over that to start with, because otherwise, to me, it feels more like monopoly money, and you lose some of the respect that you need for the discipline to carry you through.
It's funny, a couple of things occurred to me as you were talking. One is when I took my first step into entrepreneurship, I very quickly became aware that money is oxygen, and if you run out of money, you suffocate. So you're very, very focused on every dollar.
Yes.
And especially when it's your own money, which mine was. Second thing is that you don't have time for procrastination. You don't have time for bullshit. You don't have time.
Right.
You don't have time for politics, and you really do need to focus your time on those things that are going to generate revenue.
Yes.
And if it doesn't generate revenue, it doesn't deserve to be focused on today.
Yes, I was watching a clip, an advert for the Prophet, and essentially he said, "Yeah, we need millions of dollars in money," and he essentially said, "Money will make you stupid." And I think there's when we first started, we had people throwing out, "Oh yeah, spend $5,000 on a public relations firm and this and that," and you're like, "Well, it's not your money. I'm not buying that."
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? Where is GIVN going to be? And I want you to kind of look into that crystal ball of yours. Where is GIVN going to be in, let's say, 3 years' time if you achieve what you want to achieve with the business?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think within 3 years, our goal is to be a national brand, to be distributed nationally, to have a footprint in all the major markets, primarily the Midwest, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, and the West Coast primarily. And that will have kind of a comprehensive beverage offering. For me, the principal offerings are our core product that we have today, the spring water product, as well as a natural springs sparkling water, because that's kind of both my personal passion and I believe an underexplored market. I think moving beyond the beverage category, GIVN is all about taking everyday purchases and turning them into meaningful good. So we are continually looking for new products and new endeavors where we can make that mission positive. So, one of the things that led us into water was this concept that, sure, you have Toms and shoes and Warby Parker and glasses, but how many pairs of shoes and how many glasses can you buy in a year versus 224 million bottles of single-serve water being consumed every year? It's a huge area where that micro portion that feeds off of that consumption could do a tremendous world of good. So I think in 3 years, we'll have identified our next major product category where we'll look to push into another everyday purchase and turn it into meaningful good.
So you guys aren't necessarily focused on being a bigger, badder, better beverage company?
No. I mean, it depends which day you ask. If we're talking to investors, we're doing nothing but beverages. But we are very much focused on becoming a leading social brand, principally in the beverage category, and then we plan on expanding into other likely commodity markets. Because, the way we think about our market is you look at a private label brand and you look at a premium label brand, and if you see a large disparity in the price structure or that the retailer, that the consumer is paying, without any inherent underlying difference in the cost structure, for us, that's an opportunity to fund social good, whether it's water, whether it's health, whether it's pencils. We're really open to where that can take us. And we think that the concept of GIVN, the concept that an everyday purchase, a general consumer item, can still be both premium and productive from a social standpoint is a powerful position to be in the marketplace.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of reasons why you guys are really getting some good traction, even in this early days. One of which is because you're infused with good karma, obviously.
Yep.
What you do is positive, or taking an existing product and making it a positive out of it. The other is, I think, your culture or your approach to how you're doing business. As you say, you're turning up in jeans and a sweater, you're being very honest, you're being very straightforward, there's no glitz, there's no sales
right.
in air quotes about what you guys do. How will you maintain that culture if you are, in 3 years' time, a national brand, you've got different SKUs and so on? How will you make sure that you kind of keep what's good about what you do?
Right. I mean, it's funny. I was reading an article before our interview today about Blake Mycoskie and Tom's, and it was a recent HBR article where he was kind of talking about how he lost that along the way with Tom's and actually went on a sabbatical to kind of regain it. For us, in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be all about the people and the organization that we build. Liz and I are very much of the same mind and bringing we think there's a tremendous untapped workforce of people of similar mindsets. So for us, who we bring into the company and their outlook on what we're trying to do are key. I think the other piece of it is our partners. So when we think about our partners, all of our manufacturing partners buy into what we're doing. I mean, we may be small and growing, but we come to them asking for the discounts that Kroger would ask of them, and we ask it from them because we're committed to something that's more than just putting another product out on the marketplace.
Why are you driving them down on price so that you can take that profit and give that day of clean water?
Yes, absolutely. Driving costs out of the supply chain is what helps us, be a viable entity to drive funds into clean water to drive awareness of our product on the shelves so that people can join the movement, so that we can continue to expand and really make this something bigger than just Liz and John.
So very quickly, just take me through the benefit of that day of clean water. How does that break down? What's that all about?
Sure, absolutely. So one thing that we do that's a little different, and it comes out of my experience with the CDC, and it's a fundamental belief of what we're doing, is that the world doesn't need another water-based nonprofit. What the world needs is more funding to go to the right water-based nonprofits. So beyond all of what we've talked about how we produce our bottles of water, where we source them, we spent as much time, if not more time, in working with and selecting our partners who help us fulfill that promise, reviewing their financials, interviewing their executives, understanding their success to date. And I'll just highlight and take this moment to highlight one of our main partners, Water is Basic. You can find them at waterisbasic.org. You know, they are a locally led solution to a local problem in South Sudan. So if you look at their organization, they are 98% led by South Sudanese. The idea was the South Sudanese, the work is done by the South Sudanese, the benefits accrue to the South Sudanese. The only thing that's really happening there is that the funding is being orchestrated and channeled from the U.S. And I think it's, as we look at that aspect of our business, we view GIVN as a product platform that connects concerned consumers with highly efficient, highly effective, impactful nonprofit partners. So GIVN is the bridge, it isn't the solution. So one of the things we really desperately wanted to avoid, and it's something that our competitors do, you won't see a lot of pictures of Liz and John out in Asia or Africa standing with wells, because for the $3,000 it would take me to visit there, I could solve the water crisis for 12,000 people. And so our ethos is really connecting with the charities and using our product and our brand as a platform to really accelerate change, not create some sort of new nonprofit. So we're really proud of our partners and excited about the opportunity.
So what do they actually do, though? You give them money, which is based
Yeah.
on a certain proportion of every transaction.
Yes.
And that money then goes.
So in Water is Basics, so we work with several interventions. Water is Basic is a borehole drilling company, wells. They drill wells and they drill and repair wells in South Sudan. We work with water.org, which most people know from Matt Damon. Their primary intervention, or the way that they help people, is through microfinancing. And we also work and have made donations to UNICEF and their TAP project, which is a blend of interventions. And we're looking at other folks that provide tablet-based solutions. You know, as you look at providing solutions to water scarcity, there's everything from drilling the wells to creating businesses that are sustainable, to providing tablets and other solutions that can purify water that isn't clean. So we take a portfolio approach to that. We look to spread the love, if you will, across multiple types of interventions, types of methods for dealing with water scarcity.
So is it a certain percentage of every bottle purchased from a cash perspective gets donated to one of these?
Yeah, this is, you know, on our original bottle, which nobody has ever seen because it really only was produced for apparently my basement. We had this was another learning lesson. It had a tagline on it that said "People, not percentages." And you know, for us, it's very important. We think it's important to engaging the consumer that, you know, when I look at the back of a bottle and I see 5 cents goes to this or 100% of proceeds go to that, I don't know what that means. You know, is that 100% of profits after the executive gets paid $1 million, or is that 5 cents going to the organization, but 2.5 cents covers administrative costs? And so for us, one of our central value propositions is when you buy GIVN, we are going to fund a day of clean water. If it costs 10 cents, 20 cents, 5 cents, 1 cent, we work to manage that cost, obviously, internally, but we view it as critically important that we focus on the people that we're helping and not the percentages or the pennies or the proportion of profits.
So it's one person getting clean water for a day.
Yes.
Perfect. While you were talking, I had this crazy idea of one day there being a store where everything in that store is actually offsetting the cost of producing that product, the cost of the environment of packaging that product, where everything in that store is offset in some way, and kind of covering the downside of the fact that that product exists. In other words, a given store, a whole store of given products where you're going to drink bottled water, or most people will. You know at one time or another you're going to have a soda. There are certain key products you're just going to use. Why not make that conscious decision to choose those products which minimize that cost to the environment, minimize that cost to the kind of society it's involved with?
Absolutely, and from our perspective, also amplify the good that's in the hearts of most people. I mean, I think one of the things about our product, many products that folks consume today, is it's a reflection of themselves. That people invest in premium products to reflect in some attribute of their individual personalities, desires, hopes, and dreams, and so it's not, for us, it's creating a product that has a minimum impact, that doesn't sacrifice any of the quality attributes, and allows you to truly reflect the good that's within you. So it's kind of the triple threat. We love, putting consumers in a position where really the only choice they have to do is buy the product.
So great product that is comparable with the top quality product right next door on the same shelf.
Yep.
A price point which is the same or more expensive than an equivalent product.
It is generally the same or less expensive.
Okay. So less expensive than the Fijis and the Cos and all the other kind of equivalent products out there.
Yes, the slices of icebergs.
The packaging itself has been intelligently created to minimize the impact and its kind of biodegradability and so on after use.
Yes.
Right? And each bottle is going to give a person in need a 1 day of clean water.
Yes.
Awesome. And you do that from your living room, from your basement. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, and occasionally from coffee shops. Where airplanes are also another growing workplace.
Oh yeah.
Yes, as I would put in a plug for Southwest and their and their support of small businesses around the U.S. We live on their planes, and we are on the road meeting with retailers more and more every week.
Perfect. So I applaud you. When we talked when I talked to you, I had an aha moment after about 10 minutes of chatting with you. At the beginning, I'm like, okay, a water company. It was sort of a head-scratching moment for me. But after talking with you guys for about 10 minutes, all sorts of different light bulbs went on, both from the benefits to the retailer, the benefits to the consumer, and ultimately also the supply chain as well. So.
Yeah, we're very proud of what we're doing. We're really excited about the products we offer, and we're really just tremendously thankful for our retail partners and all the work they do to help us get out in front of consumers and make the choice to give so easy.
So, out of interest, are you guys going through fundraising now, or is you guys are literally still bootstrapping the business?
So we at this very moment, we are still bootstrapping the business. We are in the process of raising additional funding. I think we're going through all of the usual steps. We're going to be raising some money. So we recently completed as you well know, the Food Accelerator program. which is run by SOSV. We're in talks with SOSV for an initial amount of financing to support our needs over the next 3 months. In part with that, we're also conducting our seed round of financing, which includes meeting all those friends and family that you haven't talked with in a while, but now you've got to catch up with because they're accredited investors, and who doesn't want to join the fun? And also working with seed stage investors, angels, and other funds to put that together to support our operations in the next 12 months.
I actually think, having spoken with you today, that your strategy of just being you,
Yep.
and not trying to wow people with your impressiveness, is actually, being real is going to speed up the process for you versus other folks going through the same process.
Oh, excellent. Well, if you are listening to this podcast, feel free to reach me.
Okay, so getting back to that, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. If somebody, having heard what you've had to say, wants to connect with you for whatever reason, whether it's a consumer, a member of the press, a potential investor, whoever,
Sure.
Let's go back through those contact details.
Sure. You can reach us at info@GIVN, GIVN brands, brands.com. You can find us on the web at givnbrands.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of the others at GIVN Water, GIVN WATER. And if you want to pick up the phone and give us a call, you can reach us at 888-282-0492.
And that's where Matt Damon gives you a call when he wants to get behind this thing?
That's right. It's where he should call directly if he wants to just fund the entire seed round.
Not even that. Maybe he just wants to get behind it because, this is a charity. It's involved in the benefits that are dear to his heart.
I would say that we can do as much good as him drinking that toilet water instead of the ice bucket challenge.
Awesome. Okay, we are going to wrap this one up. I do encourage anyone that's listening who has follow-on questions to reach out to me at FoodX or to GIVN through the contact details that you've just been taken through. So really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Any last-minute requests of people listening, what you want them to go do after having listened to your story?
Sure. I think for us, we're all about the feedback, learning. We'd love your thoughts. Even if you don't have money to invest, we'd love your support, feedback, thoughts on new products, and really just any insights or inklings that you have. We get a lot of mail, but we could always take more.
Cool. All right. Have a good evening. I'm going to press pause and we are going to be done. Thank you so much.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.